All right, welcome everyone to the IB Me UBU show. I'm your host, Antoine Valentine, and joining me today is a very special guest and new friend. And I'm going to try to pronounce the name properly, and you correct me if I got it wrong, because I guess I've been saying it wrong all along. It's Von
But that's
Lai
okay. We've only known each
Dumone.
other a couple weeks.
Just a couple weeks. So Von Lai-DuMOne,
Correct.
who is the founder and CEO of WorkSmart Advantage, right? Which is a progressive team development and leadership training company that brings training to life through expert-led sessions and creativity-driven methods. Vaughn is also a TED Talk speaker, as well as the author of a very interesting book named "What If Pigs Can Fly." Did I miss anything about you that you think is important for people to know?
No, I think that's a great introduction, and the rest of it we'll get into.
Okay, good. So yes, you and I had the pleasure of meeting you maybe about a month ago now in Malibu at Pepperdine Waves Weekend for the MSML event that day, where I met you and others. And that's one of the things that we have in common is we both have a master's degree in management and leadership from Pepperdine, which I always like to start with building on what we have in common. And let me just start there. What brought you to Pepperdine for your MSML?
So I remember I got the MBA, the MSL wasn't available yet. So we do have
Ah, ah,
Pepperdine in
ah,
common.
ah.
And
Okay.
I wish I had that in common with you because after, and you forgot to mention when we're up at that Waves event, we weren't just there, you were speaking at the event.
I
And I was really
was. Yeah.
impressed with your presentation. So,
Thank you.
so what brought
Thank
me to
you.
Pepperdine was I had graduated from college. I was working random jobs, thinking I want to be a physical therapist, a chiropractor, and this will give you a little bit of insight into my personality. But one day I was driving home from my physical therapy assistant job, and I heard on the radio an advertisement for Pepperdine MBA, and I thought that sounds like a good idea. So just a few weeks later, I took the GMAT, I believe it is that you have to take. This is years ago, so I don't quite remember. I took the
Mhm.
GMAT, passed that, applied, got in, and off I went. There was not a
Mhm.
lot of thought other than the fact that I think my thought back then was, well, if I go to chiropractic school, I'm a chiropractor. If I go to physical therapy school, I'm a physical therapist. But if I go get my MBA, I can be anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. And thank you for correcting me. You're right. I do remember you saying that now, that you went for an MBA. But correct me if I'm wrong. I think, did you say you probably would have went from MSML if that was available when you were looking? Is
Oh,
that correct?
well, yes, I don't. I
All
mean,
right.
what I know about the program is what
Ah,
our mutual friend Jillian has told me about the program, and what
right.
I learned that day. And
Ah,
based on the work I do today in leadership development, company culture, I just feel it was much more aligned
hmm.
with the work I do. And I think I made a joke with you when I met you that you guys didn't have to do finance or accounting. That sounds like I can't believe I suffered through all those things.
It's funny you say that because, um, yeah, I was considering getting an MBA for a long time, and I ended up going for the MSML because, again, I felt it aligned more with what I was interested in. But I will say one of the nice perks was, yeah, no math required, no economics or statistics required in the MSML, which I know is part of the MBA. So prior to that, though, I know you went to UC Santa Barbara and you got a bachelor's degree in psychology, and I always
I
find
did.
psychology an interesting topic. Although I never studied it formally, um, I've read a lot of books that were suggested by friends that I found quite fascinating in helping understand my own behavior. Um,
Mm-hmm.
why do I say and do the things that I do? And then by extension, as a leader, why do people on my teams or coworkers do or say the things they do? So, can you talk to me about why you chose to get a bachelor's degree in psychology and maybe what are some of the learnings that have been useful to you in your career?
So again, one of those things where again a glimpse into my personality. So I grew up and we might get this story a little bit later. I grew up, in a refugee family. My family fled Vietnam, came here in 1975. So I grew up in a very traditional family who, it wasn't a choice whether I was going to go to college or not. I was going to go to college and preferably become an engineer, a lawyer, or a doctor. So I chose the path of let's start going down that doctor route. So I started studying biology. That was my first major. And I think it was about year two where I just could not pass OChem. I was too, I think I had tried twice. I'm like, I'm not just passing this OChem. What else can I do here? So I chose psychology. So again, it was one of those situations where it wasn't exactly a first choice or a conscious choice, I should say. It was a necessary choice. But in hindsight, I really feel like it has helped me in almost everything I've done, not just in business and in my career, but just in life, right? Like you're saying, understanding human behavior, understanding the way people think. Now, again, it was a bachelor's degree, so it was a lot of the basics, but it got me interested enough so that I do things like you do. I continue to study it, read it, especially even in my MBA, studying organizational behavior. That has so much to do with psychology as well.
Right. Yeah. Um, is there, specifically when it comes to psychology, is there any book that stands out in your mind as one that you felt was really meaningful or pivotal in sort of like your learning? Like for me, it was The Road Less Traveled by Dr. Scott M. Peck, and the subsequent books that was suggested to me by a friend who was a psychology major at UC Berkeley when I was around the age of 21 or 22, and it was a game changer for me. Any books or a book maybe that stands out in your mind and in your personal development when it came to psychology?
Yes. So I would say, and I don't know if you would call it a psychology book, but a book that I read that helped me get started with my business is called One Small Step Can Change Your Life, the Kaizen Way by Dr. Robert Maurer. And he talks about the psychology and the neuroscience behind the power of small steps. Because what I was finding in my life was I would set these big goals, these big lofty goals and never reach them, and then I would feel bad about myself, right? I felt like, well, why am I such a procrastinator? Why am I setting these goals and never reaching them? And when I read his book, I realized, oh, it's neuroscience. It's a pattern as human, a pattern of human behavior, where when you set a goal that's too big, your brain automatically will shut it down, thinking you're doing something too dangerous. So it doesn't allow you to go there. So for me, understanding that and understanding the power of small steps was really helpful, because number one, I stopped blaming myself. I stopped thinking like there's a problem with me and realizing it's human behavior. And then when I started taking those small steps, I was able to reach those goals, not even just reach them, but reach them a lot faster than I would have if I had just stayed in that mindset of here's where I'm trying to go, here's where I'm trying to go, and then never getting there.
It's interesting. I heard you say just a moment ago, it sounded like being maybe overly critical of yourself about maybe not achieving certain goals, but instead better to celebrate the maybe baby steps or um, I know that that's something I've struggled with in my life for sure. I guess there's an expression or a saying, you're your own worst critic.
Oh, yes, right.
And I definitely have felt that way. And I think it's good to be self-aware, but too much can be harmful. Um, uh, have you ever, I know in your practice, and we'll talk about your business and some of the work that you do for leadership and leadership development. Is that something you personally ever sort of struggled with or maybe helped others that may be struggling that? And what advice would you give to someone who maybe is currently facing that?
So always, I think again, for me to understand that for myself has, and I think that's where a lot of my work comes from, is like, how has it impacted me? And I wanted to help, I wanted to share it with others. I'm just giving you an example. Today I shared a podcast with a girlfriend of mine, because yesterday we were having lunch, and she just kept saying no to herself, right? So she kept saying no, is I'm sure I'm ready, but what if like in 30 years from now this happens? So it was a Dr. Joe Dispenza podcast where I was like, listen to every single word of this, right? Because he talks about how our brains and our minds will trick us into believing the fear
Mm.
versus the possibility. So that is a lot of what my work is around. So my advice is when you are in your head, to try to reframe. And there's a reframing tool that I often use for myself. I often teach in my work is, and I write in my book is, what is the limiting belief? Right. For me, for example, the book idea was in my head for 4 years. But every time it would come up, the first thought I had in my head was, well, who am I to write a book? I don't know how to write a book. And think about for 4 years, if every time I thought, let's write a book, and my second thought was, who are you to write a book? Why would, like, who's going to read your book? Think about how far I would get writing a book. Nowhere, right? But if I could reframe that limiting belief of I don't know how to write a book into I don't know how to write a book, but I can figure out the resources on how to. Right. So that even that simple reframe allowed me and my brain to start looking for possibilities now versus staying in that challenge.
Okay. So I definitely want to talk more about the book and, of course, again, your WorkSmart advantage. But before we go there, I know that you spent some time in pharma. It's like almost 7 years at GSK in sales. Can you
Mm-hmm.
talk to me about the transition, I guess, from maybe corporate life in pharma to starting your own business? And correct me if I'm wrong, it looks like that was the next step after GSK. Is that correct?
It was. And just to even go back further, I had mentioned that all my life, I mean, I mentioned my background, and I just think all my life up till that pharma career was subconsciously thinking, what can I do to impress someone else? Right? What can I
Mm.
do to make my parents proud? What can I do to make that looks good to other people? And that's how I ended up, possibly even getting my MBA, doing all those different careers I did between getting the MBA and starting this business, pharma being the last of it. And it was when I was working at GlaxoSmithKline, a great company. It just wasn't for me. I knew that from day one. But again, it was, who am I to do this on my own? I had this idea of this business in my head for 6 years, and
Mhm.
I just kept getting stuck. Um, and it was when, and I would hope that people would come to the realization they can start something new before something like this happens to them. But it was a time in my life where I had just had a baby. My son was 8 weeks old. My brother was he was a police officer. He was in a severe motorcycle accident that left him in a 2-month coma in the neuro ICU at UCLA. And my dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, all within the same 12 weeks. So it was during that time when I was holding this little 8-week-old baby, roaming around UCLA ICU, waiting for my brother to wake up, that I thought to myself, like, what am I waiting for? Right? Clearly, life is short. My brother not only survived, but he's thriving. He went back to being a police officer. I saw this baby in my arms, thinking, I want this child to see his mom doing something she loves. And that's when I took the steps. I had the idea already. So I didn't have to make something up. The idea was already there for 6 years. And it was just that situation, or those three things happening all at once in my life that forced me into action.
Gotcha. And so, from a timing perspective, I'm trying to follow your
Yeah.
career chronologically. And I do want to go back uh, today when we have before we wrap up and talk about your journey to the U.S. as an immigrant and your family. But before we go there, so you made the leap from GSK, you started your own business, WorkSmart Advantage. Um, uh, when was the TED Talk and when was the book? What if pigs can fly? Where do those fit in the sort of order of things?
Sure. So the runway to my business was very long, because again, I started my business as a hobby almost when my son was 12 weeks old. That same year he was born, the same year I quit my job. So that was 2013. Um, the TEDx talk didn't happen until 2019. And that was one of the situations where I had gone down to Anaheim with my mom for this event around, her story about being one of the first 20 licensed Vietnamese manicures in the United States. And again, as a business owner for all those years, I thought I had always wanted to do a TEDx talk, but there was that voice, what am I going to talk about? Creativity, that's been done. Who am I to? What's the story I'm going to tell? Who's going to listen to my TEDx talk? And when I saw my mom on that stage in Anaheim, I thought, this is the story, right? Like who else can tell this story?
Mhm.
So what was interesting was that I had my story, right? I knew I was going to tell that story in a TEDx talk. And about, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, I was at home sitting right here at this desk, scrolling through LinkedIn, and I saw someone post that they were producing a TEDx talk in Anaheim called TEDx Women Mission of Mavericks. So I clicked on it. They had all their speakers lined up. They were only selling tickets to 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 join in the audience. So I bought a ticket. I walked away from my computer, and there was that little voice that kept saying, like, you should talk on that stage, Bun, right? So I went back to the computer, emailed them, and a little while later, I got an email back saying, we'll make room for you. Come speak on our stage. And it was, I mean, and then look, I'll like parlay this into the book because I wrote the talk. I sent it out to a couple people to read it who had done TEDx talks before, and they said, great story, but what's the through line? And I looked at this story, I reread it and reread it. I'm like, oh my goodness, the through line is curiosity. The through line is, when you pause and pay attention to your curiosities, when you ask powerful questions like what if and how might we, and then when you take that small step, that's how you create possibilities for yourself, just like my mom and those women did. And so that ended up being the TEDx talk. The through line was following curiosity, the power of following curiosity. And then 2023 was when I finally published the book. And yeah, and the book is called What It Takes to Fly, a practical guide to follow your curiosities to achieve impractical possibilities. And in it, I just share my mom's story, some antidotes from my own life about following curiosity, and a framework and a workbook for readers to be able to follow their own curiosities.
I love this. This is such a great story. And thank you for helping me understand the timeline. So the TEDx talk was just before COVID,
Yes.
2019, it sounds
Yeah.
like. And obviously, then a few years went by, and then you wrote the book. And yeah, I gleaned from preparing for this meeting. Curiosity is sort of a underlining theme throughout your journey. Um, and talk to me a little about Lego Play and how that fits into maybe curiosity and leadership development, team building, etc. Because I noticed the box of Legos right behind
Yes,
you.
that's right. Lots of Legos all over the place here. So Lego Serious Play is this facilitation methodology that was started at the Lego Group, and they license it to several what they call master facilitators to teach others. So I studied Lego Serious Play under Strategic Play, Jackie Lloyd Smith. They are based out of Canada, and I had met them. I had met Strategic Play and Jackie at this event when I was very first starting my business. I was just Googling creative in the workplace, all this, and something popped up. It was called the Creative Problem Solving Institute, CPSI. It was in Buffalo, New York, and it was a week-long program. And I went June, I don't remember what year that was now, it's 2016 maybe. And I met Jackie, and she had all this Lego with her, and we just did these exercises. I was like, this is pretty incredible. It really got me thinking differently, right? Got me out of my head, thinking with my hands, sharing more than I would have ever shared before if someone just asked me a question. And and then I went and got certified. I got certified as a Lego Serious Play facilitator, so I can facilitate Lego Serious Play now, and as a trainer under Strategic Play. So now I can train people to become Lego Serious Play facilitators. And when you leave the first workshop you do or the first training you leave knowing how to do a half day workshop and a full day workshop for teams and groups. And people literally can leave, and now they're like, I'm just going to teach this workshop. I have a whole half day workshop I can do. I have a whole full day workshop I can do. Now, because I am who I am, I just took the pieces and made it my own. Right, I took the piece of Lego Serious Play and I incorporate it into the work I do rather than do it exactly as I was taught. I take the methodologies and the skill sets and apply them where I see fit in my practice.
Yeah, that's great. You made it your own, which is makes it unique and special. So that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Um, And just out of curiosity, I didn't play with Legos as a kid. I didn't start playing with them until I had kids. Was it the same for you, or did you play with
Never.
them when you
I
were little?
never played with Legos as a kid. And it's interesting because so now I don't see them as toys, right?
Yeah,
I see them as creative thinking tools. And
yeah,
there is, and it's interesting to talk to people about it because most people see Lego as toys. So some antidotes around how it's worked in my profession and what the work I do is um, there's an organization I volunteer at called the Honor Foundation in San Diego, and they work with special force operators as they transition from military to civilian careers. So here I am in front of 40 Navy SEALs, right? Marine Raiders, Green Berets, telling them to build with Lego, build ideas about your future career with Lego. And I'll give them prompts. Like one of the prompts I give them, think about something you loved when you were a child and think about what if. Like, what if I could make a career out of this? What would it be? And build ideas. And one gentleman built himself on it, like built a little Lego model with him on top of a boat. Um, and then 6 months later, he emailed me. He said, I got a job as a yacht broker in San Diego. Right. So it really expands our imagination, expands the way we think.
yeah. Yes, I must say I've been curious about the work you've been doing with Legos as a team building sort of tool. Um, I haven't participated in one. I definitely plan to. It's on my list of things to do. In the meantime, I do continue to enjoy playing with my kids' Lego as an adult. Um, Going back to the book, I love the title because, of course, it reminds me of the expression or the response someone gives to something impossible or something that is unlikely to happen when pigs fly, which is again not possible as far as we know. But your book is called "What If Pigs Could Fly or Can Fly?" What talk to me about the title of the book and what it means to you.
So the title of the book comes from when I was at UC Santa Barbara. I used to drive this little white Toyota Cell with no air conditioning. And I had bought this little polymer clay flying pig that I hung from my rearview mirror. And because I had no air conditioning, the windows were always down. So when I was thinking about this, this idea of curiosity and possibility, it just took me back to all those hours in that car driving up and down Pacific Coast Highway back home and all the way up to Santa Barbara and seeing that flying pig, right, just like kind of flying around in my peripheral view. And subconsciously, I really feel like it got me thinking like, well, if pigs can fly, we are capable of anything we put our minds to and anything we think is possible.
Mhm. I love it. Um, and the last thing I want to ask you about is again, what I heard in your TEDx talk,
Mm.
your family's story of coming to the US as immigrants, um, really resonated for me because my wife had a similar story, but from Nicaragua. Her father was also in the military, and she was about 5 years old. I think you were a little younger
I was too, yeah.
when you had to leave. And um, over the years, I've come to understand just how traumatic that was for her. So I'm just wondering, I'm assuming it's obviously the same for you, perhaps, and has probably shaped you in your life and maybe the way you see things. Would that be fair to
Yeah, well,
say?
absolutely, but not consciously. Yeah, in
Yeah.
a sense, like the departure from Vietnam was completely traumatic. I was 2 years old. We left the day Saigon fell to the Communist Party, right? So it was like the Afghan evacuation when we saw
Mm,
that, right? People were just leaving any way they could,
mm,
and we were one of the fortunate ones that got out. And I was two at the time, so I don't remember. Although I do remember at being about 3 or 4 years old, and my sister, who's 2 years older than me, playing Let's Play a Game. Everyone grab a pillowcase, stuff it with as much as you can, and hide under a table.
yeah,
Right? Like so it's things like that where the even though I don't consciously remember, it has 100% shaped my life. And being the child of parents who faced all that and then had to come to this new country with absolutely nothing and start over and being shaped by all their experiences as well. So a lot of a lot of gratitude for what that taught me in terms of discipline, persistence, curiosity, even and creativity. So a lot of that and then also a lot of having to unlearn, right? To
Mhm.
having to unlearn that the world's not the world, like the world is and can be safe. The floor isn't going to drop out from under me at any moment. And it's interesting, this idea of generational trauma, and this may be a little bit too out there for a lot of people, but it really resonated with me when it was told to me. So my son, who has what they call generalized anxiety, I was talking to a hypnotherapist about him, and I've taken him to several to several not psychologists, like therapists, and he's like, I have nothing to say to you. Like, there's nothing, I don't know what to say to you. And this hypnotherapist said to me, well, he is saying that because he doesn't have anything to say to them. This is not his trauma. He's like, it's generational trauma. And she said, heal yourself and you'll heal him.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wow. Yeah. So that's a very, as I'm thinking about you saying that and what that means, very powerful, very,
It
very
really is.
powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Eye-opening in a sense, or ironic maybe, that trying to help him, but really those words maybe were more helpful for you, perhaps.
And it's
Um,
empowering though, right? It's like
yeah,
for
yeah,
years, especially coming from a refugee family where
yeah.
I felt like a lot of things in my life were not in my power, and felt very powerless and voiceless as a child. So to be told like, oh, well, the most important thing you can do, healing your child,
Mm,
you can do it. You have the power to do that.
mm. Very resonates with me very much, that story. Again, because of my wife in a
Yeah.
similar situation she went through. Her father being in the military, government being overthrown, escaping.
Yes.
Yes.
And she remember at 5 years old, she probably remembers
Yeah, she
more than I
does.
do. Yeah.
She does. Yeah, for sure. Um, this has been fun. I've learned a lot. I'm really grateful for you taking time to share your story. What haven't I asked you about that you think is important for anyone watching and listening to sort of take away from this? Anything that you want to share that you think would be helpful?
Yeah, something I like to do, because I really feel like this idea of following curiosity is so important to everybody. And I'm a firm believer that our curiosities have sort of like chosen us, right? So my curiosities are different than your curiosities. And oftentimes we are just too busy to pay attention to them. And I do feel like when I talk about this, the topic of curiosity and like having the courage to take creative action, it resonates with almost everybody, because almost everyone out there can relate to this idea um that yeah, I've had this idea in my head. It keeps coming back to me. I've never done anything with it. So look at that, and what is that? And rather than just saying no, I can't, ask yourself those questions like, well, what if and how might I? It doesn't have to be a huge shift in your life, but is there something small you can do, one small step you can take towards that curiosity or that change in your life? And I read in a book when I first started my business this idea of you don't have to see, and I know it's a quote too about like, just take that first step. You don't have to see the whole staircase, but this idea of just start and keep going, right? And take those small steps.
Well said. Um, how should anyone watching get a hold of you, maybe learn more, get in contact with you?
Well, you always email me at VAN at worksmartadvantage.com, and connect with me on LinkedIn. I am literally on LinkedIn every day for a few reasons. I feel like it's become a community. I've met some amazing people through LinkedIn, and that's where I share a lot of my work. Is a place
And
for
if
me to be creative.
Yes. And of course, if anyone wants the book, it's called What If Pigs Can Fly, and it's found on Amazon. Is there an
Correct.
audio version as well?
There's not an
Or,
audio
okay,
version yet.
not yet. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
maybe to coming soon, perhaps. We'll stay tuned to find out. Vaughn, thank you so much. This has been truly a pleasure. I've learned a
Thank
lot,
you,
and I'm
Anton.
sure everyone watching will learn something as well. Thank you.
Thank you.